presentation for Chapter 9 entitled Behavioral Health Services. This chapter will explain the history of behavioral health in the United States, and will also describe behavioral health and its fit in the health delivery continuum. A discussion will be had on recent trends in mental illness and serious mental illness. We'll discuss and describe what are known as the barriers to care, both access and financially. It will describe financing for behavioral health services. And lastly, we'll look at examples of some successful models that have been offered, especially by the Veterans Health Administration. The implementation of the ACA clearly decreased the number of uninsured individuals throughout the country, and it truly has opened the door for more access by more people to seek care. However, this increase in patient demand has also resulted in workforce shortages in many areas of healthcare, and specifically in behavioral health. The most recent statistics from the NIMH report that approximately 51.5 million, or 20.6% of American adults, experience a mental health illness in any given year. Patients with a mental illness and a substance abuse disorder experience additional barriers secondary to the stigma associated with substance abuse. Substance abuse, including alcoholism, is a chronic brain disease, and like many other psychiatric disorders. The text provides some detail on what is known as the Mental Health Parity Act of 1996. And essentially what this act did was set lifetime limits and annual limits for mental health services that were comparable to lifetime and annual limits for medical care. The law allowed many cost-shifting loopholes, such as setting limits on psychiatric inpatient days, prescription drugs, and outpatient visits, raising coinsurance and deductibles, and modifying essentially the definition of medical necessity. In attempting to address the cost, quality, and access to healthcare, or what we now know and have learned to be the triple aim, Congress enacted the ACA, which everyone knows as the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Since its inception, much has been debated about its ability to attain the triple aim. One aspect of the ACA that has gained more attention is mental health care, or what we now know as behavioral health care. As shown in Figure 9.1, behavioral health care has now become one of the domains of care within the lexicon of healthcare. Although this new term has not been fully adopted throughout the country, the elements of behavioral health, such as psychiatry as a medical subspecialty, is becoming a component of an integrated approach when treating patients, or consumers as they are now known. The National Institute of Mental Health, as we learned earlier, estimates that 51.5 million American adults may experience a mental illness in a given year. Figures 9.2 and 9.3 provide a more visual illustration of how mental health affects adults by gender, age, and racial makeup. Research supports the fact that many mental health disorders are temporary and have minimal effect on personal function, regardless of gender, age, or race and ethnicity. However, there is a subgroup estimated to be approximately 13.1 million adults ages 18 and above that suffer from a serious mental illness resulting in a serious functional impairment which substantially interferes with or limits one or more major life activities. Figure 9.4 illustrates this subgroup. Figure 9.5 breaks down the prevalence of serious mental illness in the United States by gender and age. If one were to compare figure 9.4 with 9.6, you can readily see the gap that exists between the prevalence of serious mental illness and the percentage of those groups that actually receive treatment. The differences obviously are stark, and one of the reasons in many cases we are experiencing a mental health crisis in this country. Contrary to popular belief, mental illness can be diagnosed and treated much like a physical illness. According to the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or commonly called DSM-5, there are 22 diagnostic categories for psychiatric disorders, and within these categories, there are specific criteria for more than 300 different conditions. Comorbidity, which is the existence of two or more diagnoses. The NIMH states that nearly half of those with a psychiatric disorder meet this comorbidity definition. Substance abuse may occur in 23 to 80% of patients and may be one of the diagnoses depending on the specific psychiatric disorder. Connecting with medical care services is extremely difficult for psychiatric patients, and when they are able to do so, they have challenges adhering to the treatment plan. Adherence may also be a result of what we call barriers to care. The lack of access to care are multifactorial and may include geographic distribution of providers, financial limitations, lack of or inadequate health insurance, the stigma itself of the illness or disease, misunderstandings about the treatability of certain conditions, personal and provider attitudes, many cultural issues that permeate our communities, and poorly organized care delivery systems. Substance abuse is a chronic disease, although not always recognized as such by providers. Unfortunately, relapse may be part of the substance abuse recovery process, and many times is subject to fluctuations that include improvement, stabilization, and then a relapse. In some cases, patients who relapse are excluded from further treatment, which creates another barrier to care. When looking at the organization of psychiatric and behavioral health services, you can see that behavioral health is treated by a variety of providers working in both the private and public sectors. Services many times are structured in four highly compartmentalized sectors characterized by poor intersector communications and isolated by funding source. These four issues may include behavioral health specialists mainly treating patients only in an outpatient setting, acute care facilities that may offer dedicated psychiatric units or may admit patients to a general med-surg unit and med-surg population, primary care where family practitioners, internists, pediatricians, and nurse practitioners may see patients in an office-based practice, and lastly, human services consisting of social service agencies, school-based counseling, residential rehabilitation services, and the like offer treatment services within a patient's community. Financing behavioral health services also has its challenges, and as highlighted in the text, mental health services are funded in a number of ways, including private insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, and at times state and county funding. Historically, insurance coverage has been unequal compared to medical illness. Non-parity has been a term used when describing such inequities. The Mental Health Parity Act, which was approved, as we said, in 1996, and in essence created lifetime limits and annual limits for mental health that are similar to those limits with medical care. Many cost-shifting loopholes and treatment limitations have hampered the reimbursement for psychiatric services. There have been many attempts made to eliminate disparities between mental health and substance abuse benefits and medical surgical benefits through various legislative actions. However, we have found that many of the stipulations in the MHPA and its current amended, which is now called the Mental Health and Parity and Addiction Equity Act, could be avoided through non-quantitative treatment limitations, which essentially means lifting the limits on the scope and or duration of those benefits paid for treatment that many times go well beyond the medical care of a particular patient. Today, limiting mental health benefits to a greater extent than general health benefits is no longer permitted at the federal level. So when you have a Medicare or Medicaid patient, they would be seen differently in this situation. The Department of Labor is now charged with monitoring such compliance. One of the models considered for treating behavioral health services can be found with the VA, which is the largest integrated health system in the country and has had a fair amount of success in their model of treating psychiatric issues. Table 9.1 lists some of the conditions and the resources and treatment options offered to their patients. As you can see through this table, the VA administration seems to take more of an evidence-based approach when treating the various diagnoses of patients that they see in their facilities. This is just one example of the many models that are being touted to treat mental illness and also to help with behavioral health services. Here ends the presentation for Chapter 9 on behavioral health services. Thank you for listening.